All right, welcome to Witchpolice Radio. If you've been a regular listener to the show, you know that I often have guests returning. Usually not within the same year, usually a year or two later, when they have something new happening. And then most of the time, it's someone talking about music the first time they're on the show, and then coming back talking about new music they have going on. But in this case, we have a guest who was on talking about music, but now you have something very different, but still sort of connected to the whole creativity thing. So I think that the best way to start this off is if you want to introduce yourself and just give a bit of background about who you are and what you do, because I know there's a lot of things that you do there that goes beyond just being a musician. I mean, you've written a book, which is why we're here today, and you're an
Yeah.
educator and you're a musician, and there's a lot going on. So if you want to just give a quick Cole's Notes version of who you are and what you do, that would be great.
Yeah, you bet. My name is Heidi Korte. I am a singer, musician, piano player, play many instruments, music educator, composer, yeah, producer in training, all those things. And
And published author.
yeah, oh my goodness. Yeah, it's
So
so fresh.
yeah, well, it is, and that's kind of why we're doing this now. Is that this book, On the Edge of Greatness, it just came out recently, and that's got to be very exciting. I mean, writing a book seems so daunting. It seems like such a. I mean, I write for a living every day. I work as a journalist, but I mean, writing a book seems like just an extra level of stress and chaos. And
Yes.
I've never tried it, but I don't know if I ever want to.
Yeah, I never I this is not a good segue to talk about the book, but I've never thought of myself as an author. I never thought I would write a book. It's not something I'd ever planned on doing. And then I was listening to this speaker 3 years ago. That's how long it took me to get this book out. And his name is Tony Kim, and he was just saying, if you want to have influence, you have to serve your community. And I know that sounds like a TED talk, but it like really stuck with me. I was like, huh, if I want to have influence, I need to serve my community. What do I have to serve with? And then almost a couple days later, a good friend of mine and mentor from California looked at me and said, Heidi, it's time to write your book. And it was just like, it's like one of those moments, fate, call it what you will, like lightning just struck my heart. And I was like, oh, I got to write a book for young creatives and musicians.
Well, and
So,
that's an audience that you know very well. I mean, having taught so many young musicians over the years and working with them, pretty closely, that's got to help having that intimate knowledge of sort of what their struggles are and how to encourage them and how to sort of get them motivated.
yeah, well, I mean, we can talk about this a little bit later, but I mean, I wasted a 4-year university degree of music not singing because of some of those mental obstacles, like comparison and fear and anxiety and oh, there's so many of them. And so that's kind of my niche as a teacher, is dealing with those ones, those singer-songwriters who are just kind of like hidden away because of a reason that's here. And so it's my joy and delight to work them from a place of fear, anxiety, or whatever it may be, even just handling rejection. I find there's so
Sure.
many things that you can like learn about as a musician, like skill. You can learn a cool guitar, like you can be on your instrument, but it doesn't help you for those navigate those types of things. I find there's not enough books for creatives about how to navigate that aspect of it.
Well, and that sort of touches on something that comes up on this podcast a lot is that there's a lot of people, especially the way that I mean, you know this as well as anyone else too, the way the world is now with the way everyone has to sort of become a self promoter and they have to handle that whole side of things that maybe, 10, 20, 30 years ago, there would have been someone doing that or it just wouldn't have happened. And there's a lot of people who are excel at the creative side of things, but then when it comes to the business aspect and the marketing aspect and all these other stuff that doesn't come naturally with being creative. They have to learn that, and there's a lot of I think anxiety and fear around those aspects.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, I wasn't ready for it as a young 20-year-old.
Yeah,
And I'd say that's the main thing that I encounter as a music. I teach singer-songwriters, so the main thing I bump up against is those mental blocks. So I wrote a whole book. I think there's 29 chapters, and each chapter deals with a mental obstacle that's common to a creative. So, we talk about having the right motivation for your
yeah,
craft. A lot of times, I know a lot of people start out wanting to do music just to impress people. And for people to be impressed by their mad genius
sure,
instead
yeah.
of realizing that, maybe that's not the best motivation. Because then when you're trying to be impressive, it's like, well, are you? There's stress. You know, you don't know whether your audience is going to be impressed by you. So a lot of people that struggle with anxiety or stage fright, it's because they're trying to impress their audience with being perfect and really showing off their gift instead
Right.
of realizing that it actually is, you know, a gift to give away.
Yeah,
You know
that's
what
a
I
good
mean?
point. That is a good point. People are, it's that imposter syndrome, right? And I think you touch on that
Oh
in
my
the book too.
gosh.
That lots of people, I mean, just doing, being involved in podcasting for a decade now. There's a lot of people who I've met who are getting interested in starting a podcast, or they've done one for years, and that's a huge thing there too. I think with anything where you are kind of creating something, people feel like, oh wait, who am I? Why does someone want to hear me? Why is my am I good enough? And I think, like, I mean, everyone's good enough, and you just need to sort of get the confidence to put it out there.
That's what I say. Like, a lot of some sometimes a lot of the young ones I teach, um, they see each other as threats, you know? If they're doing this, then they're already successful at it. That means there's not any success for me because this other person has already started a podcast or
Yeah,
is already doing this. So then there's less for me. And what I tell them is that as long as you're being your authentic self, there's a place for you at the table of creativity. The minute you're an imitator, then not so much. I think developing authenticity, developing your own style, your own vibe, I think that's actually key to having your own place at the creative table.
and I think that this is another thing that comes up all the time on this show is that listeners can pick up on that. If you're not being genuine or not being honest, I think it's very easy. And I don't know if people in this, in Winnipeg have a better bullshit detector than maybe people in other cities, but it seems like it's a thing here, right? Like people definitely are not willing to sit through someone who is being fake. And all of the artists in any genre of music who have been really successful or really popular here, it's because they're doing something uniquely themselves and not trying to sound like, X, Y, or Z. It's you can tell if when someone breaks through, it's like, oh, that's why, because what they're doing is just genuinely them.
Yeah. Yep, totally. I watched an interview with Johnny Cash, I think CBC. You can look for it on the archives. Oh, it's such a great interview. And they ask him, you know, what is it about your music do you think that people like? And he just said it's sincerity of delivery. It's the fact that I love what I'm doing and people can sense that.
Yeah.
So,
So they connect with it. Yeah.
yep. So that's what I really try and encourage. I teach teenagers and young adults mostly, and a lot of them in that age they want to blend into the walls. They want to just blend in with everyone else, and I'm like, no, 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 no. It's actually the thing that you have that's unlike anyone else that you want to market. That's your ticket.
Yeah. Yeah. Not
It's
not
the
not
thing.
trying to be like what's popular. You want to do your own thing and make that popular because it's something special. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's also just really hard as a creative because who we are, in order to survive, we have to do the internal work, I think. If you want to live a life as a creative, you have to do the internal work. If you're going to thrive, I think.
Yeah.
Because so often what we do is graded by other people, right? Like, and especially as musicians, like we have this product, it's like personal, it comes from us, and here it is. And now someone's going to give it a dislike or a hateful comment on YouTube. And it's
Or a
like,
bad review if get an album out there, suddenly people are writing reviews of it and someone could just absolutely trash it. Yeah.
yeah. And so I just think learning how to handle that, learning how to handle, sometimes you might get rejected 8 times in a row. And then the ninth time you get something really cool that happens. I know that
Yeah.
happened with me. You know, I did this fishing music video for my dad's 70th birthday. And it was this I'm Finnish. And it was this Finnish song, is reggae, totally not my
We
style.
talked about this last time you were on the show because yeah, it was a reference to a 70s reggae
I
song. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
remember the
And
video. I saw the video. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. And I remember sending it out to so much media and news and getting just, I think I got like 9 rejections in a row. And the last one was a real ugly one. It was just like, cute song, pretty voice, not our style. It's just like, But then the next one was CTV and they loved it. And they
Right.
sent a news van 2 hours north, did a whole feature on my dad and I that went across Canada. And it's like, if I hadn't had the backbone just to keep knocking, um, after 9 rejections, you just never know what'll come. I think young artists sometimes they give up after, their first couple of rejections. So
For sure. Well, with a book like this, I guess
yeah, you've read it, right?
I, I,
Most of
I
it
read I read it
anyways.
very quickly too, because I had it for a few days, and I quickly read through it. And so, what I wanted to ask you about it is, I mean, this is, I guess, it fits in the self help category, which is kind of has a reputation for. I mean, there's a lot of self-help books that are just awful, and it's just the kind of this cookie cutter, the same advice that really doesn't have any depth to it. How do
Oh,
you how do you I'm not saying that about your book. I'm saying, how do you write something like this without, and avoid falling into these traps of, like, it seems like used car salesman kind of, you can do it without any kind of
ugh.
actual meaning behind why you can do it, or you know what I mean?
Well, I think that, well, there are many cool things about this book, but I think one of the things that's really neat is that there's about 50 voices besides mine in it, and I am just so honored. So 36 of my music students were just, I think we wrote it during 2020, and I just feel like everyone was really authentic and in their feels then. And so I asked these 36 students, what is your greatest struggle as a creative? And they
Yeah,
wrote honestly. I mean, just the honest things they wrote were just, they're so inspiring. So I think that's the first thing, is that this book has like real stories, not just me saying rah rah. In fact, sometimes I'm really harsh in the book because as a teacher, sometimes I'm known for saying it just like it is, even though it hurts. It's what you need to hear. So that's really neat, is that they've joined me. And then I interviewed about 20 professionals in different fields from all over the world,
yeah,
on what blocks their creativity, how they move past it. So there's just a lot of different voices in the book. And I think that is what makes it unique, um, as a self-help book. And it's not it's what's interesting is that some of the 70-year-olds that have read it said, Heidi, this is so deep. Like, I almost can't read it in one sitting. It's just too much for me. Whereas the teenagers are like, oh, this is great. So it's just interesting how different generations are approaching it.
sure,
To me, it's like a roadmap. It You could easily, on each chapter kind of deals with an obstacle. You could easily have a whole book on fear, right? That'd be a long book. But I just wanted a chapter on it. Each chapter kind of has, like, here's the obstacle, here's where I think its root systems are. If you're going to yank the weed out, there's going to be a root somewhere. So
sure,
these are some of the roots that I think you need to deal with to yank that out. These are some student stories of people who have been really afraid that overcome it. Here's how they did it. Here's how I would work a student through getting over stage fright and moving forward. Like, for someone struggling with fear, we would do 50 risks in a year, if not 100, little ones, and
yeah,
slowly work the bravery muscle. That's an active thing you can do to overcome, fear of performing, or just fear in general. And then there's a meditation at the end of every chapter that was written by one of my heroes, Joanne McFadder from South Carolina. What else? Yeah, and then just some other practical steps you can take to overcome it. And then often a professional will chime in about it as well. So
yeah.
there's a mishmash of voices and thoughts and opinions.
I think you're right. I think that does work in a way that it's different from if it was just you saying, do this, do this, do this. I mean, you obviously have enough of a background and experience and knowledge to be able to do that. But I think, yeah, having all those other voices in there kind of makes it a
More
little,
credible.
yeah, totally, and probably easier for someone to read too, just because, I mean, it's not just like, it's broken up, right? There's different sections, and there's different people's stories, and there's quotes from notable people that are, relevant to the material you're talking about, and it flows well, I think, because of all these different sections. But I was going to ask you, obviously being an author is not your full time job, and you not only do you teach music, but you make music yourself as well. The amount of work you must have put into this book, did that affect your ability to make music? Like, were you able to juggle and teach and everything else?
Oh, it was really hard. This book is the best thing I've ever done, and it's the hardest thing I've ever done because I don't love words.
Right.
I know that sounds silly as someone who's just authored a book, but to me, this book is so many other voices, and it's me gathering information. I'm a teacher. I want you to have this. So, this book took me 3 years of almost all my free time.
I bet, yeah.
And the publishing journey, I shouldn't say this, but it was probably one of the most soul-sucking things I've ever done in my life. Like, it's just, but yeah, I guess I'm not the typical author. The typical author would love that aspect of it, and then once the book is published, they would not enjoy marketing. And as a musician and a performer, I don't mind talking about my book because my book is designed to help.
Sure.
And I think it has value, and I stand behind it. So to me, like, I find this part more fun than, like, sitting there editing commas.
Right. I feel like I would enjoy the editing commas part because that's actually fun for me, that bit. But
You caught some typos that the editors missed. So
yeah,
thank you.
I was happy to help in that little way, at least with it. So at this point, I mean, what happens next with this? So the book's out. It's been out for a little while now. What are you planning on doing with it? Is the goal to get it into libraries? I mean, obviously you want to sell copies, but what's sort of the next step here?
Oh, no, I am. We have our book launch this Wednesday, which is so fun. I've held off on doing it. The book has been out for about a month and a half, but I didn't feel like a typical book launch was right for this book.
Right.
I've watched a lot of them, and they're wonderful, but they're really serious and kind of this atmosphere. And now the author is going to come and read from her book. And I just thought that does not suit this crowd or what we've done. So on Wednesday, this Wednesday, we're going to be streaming it live.
Well, the
We
good thing about
have
that is, sorry to interrupt, but by the time this comes out, it'll already have happened. But
oh
we can link to the
yeah
stream, right? So people can check it out.
yeah yep. So we have a big party planned this Wednesday, which is May the 31st.
Something like that.
We're
Yeah.
at the Royal Pizza, and my students and former students are coming together. They're singing, they're reading from the book, they're reading their own stories from the book. I'm going to be reading. There's going to be lots of performing. We're going to be eating lots of food and just like having a good time.
Cool.
That fits the vibe of a book for creatives, right? More so than sitting there in a more somber environment,
Totally.
which suits some things, just not this.
Yeah, it depends on the book, right? I mean, I've hosted a book launch at McNally Robinson once for a friend's book, and it was definitely more of a fun atmosphere. But I've also watched some that are very serious and very dry, and it depends on the subject matter for sure.
It just depends. Yeah, yeah. I just felt like this was more us. But I'd say like I just plan on promoting this. I would love to speak to young musicians. I think that's something I'll
Yeah,
be moving into just because I didn't write this book just for 100 people. I wrote this book for a million people. Um yeah. And I really wanted to change artistic culture. I really would love to see young people just being their authentic selves in their music. Um,
for
I'd
sure.
love to see them not fighting one another. Like so many of them I forget what chapter it is, but there's a chapter called the artistic orphan mindset, which is a concept I kind of made up, but it's basically, yeah, it's that threat, seeing everyone else as a threat instead of seeing them as your team. Like whoever
Totally.
Jack Mills, who is a really cool rapper from Edmonton, one of his quotes in the book is like, get to know the people in your neighborhood because in 10 years these are going to be the people, the professionals, the leaders, right, when we're gone with the business. So make those connections, make those friends, you know. So there's just, I think there's a lot that I think anyone could learn something from my book.
For sure. And so, if someone wants to check it out, I mean, obviously, by the time this, like I said, by the time this comes out as a podcast, the launch will have already happened. But what's the best way to find out more information about the book or get a copy?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Blue Raven, ooh, I should know that. blueravendesign.ca/ Heidi Korte is a good way to order. That way you'll be getting it right from me and you won't be paying a ton for shipping. I
Cool.
ship it just for the price of shipping. You can get it through Freeze and Press, but the shipping and handling is a lot more. And then Chapters Polo just said that they have accepted it like actually tonight.
That's
So pretty
awesome.
soon it'll be at Polo. Yeah.
That's really, really cool. And then as far as your other stuff, I mean, I know you're like you said, this has taken up a huge chunk of your life, but you also, in addition to teaching, you make your own music. You've done a lot of really cool videos and things over the last few years. What's the best way to find what you're up to as far as your own stuff?
Probably following me on Instagram would be a good way. On YouTube as well. Yeah. I haven't done anything super like my brother and I actually have a music video coming out that's just for fun. My brother was here in February and he's like, Heidi, he's like a casual singer.
Okay.
And he's like, Heidi, could we do a music video together? And so, like to me on my vacation, that's not exactly, you know, my most fun thing to do. But I love my brother, so we have filmed this beast of an acapella split screen, and that's coming out soon.
Cool.
So
Cool. Awesome. Well, yeah, I'm glad to hear things are going well. I mean, like when I heard you were writing a book, I didn't really know what to expect because, like you said, this is a first time thing for you. But it looks like everything has worked out like quite well for you. I mean, people are reading it. You're getting it in bookstores, and you getting the opportunities to talk to the target audience for the book and everything. So yeah, it's really cool to see that. I think that this also gives people maybe motivation that you can just write a book, you can just become a musician, you can just become an artist, you can do all of these things. You just have to go out and
Yep.
do it and put in the work and
Yeah,
put
which is
through.
all here too, right? Like
Yeah,
self-discipline comes from the mind. Lack of motivation comes from the mind, right? So a lot of those things, it's mindset, right? So there's a chapter on sisu, which is a good Finnish word, meaning you finish what you start. So
awesome.
I actually wanted to leave people with a quote
Sure,
that's
go
not
for it.
quite
Yeah,
on.
yeah, yeah.
Is that all right?
Yes, you can absolutely.
Okay, this quote is from, I think it's from chapter 4 of my book, which is on identity and self worth. And this chapter talks about how, um, as artists, our self worth is often tied to our performance. And it shouldn't be, because sometimes you're just going to be so good and nail that electric guitar solo. And other times you're just going to like stink.
For sure.
And it's okay. If your self worth is in that, then it's like this. And then you as a person are more like that. And so as creatives, you want to be like this. But anyways, this quote is from that chapter on identity and self-worth.
Go for it.
And it's by my friend Charles Patton II from Texas. He's a spoken word poet at Red Line Poetry. Okay, this is deep. You ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay. Your gift is valuable, no doubt about it. However, your gift only has value because you have your hands on it. Your gift literally doesn't mean anything unless you're attached to it. Example, have you ever noticed how useless a mirror is until you stand in front of it? It's because mirrors don't have an identity of their own. So they need identity to stand in front of them in order to be used. It's the same thing with gifts. There are a million singers in the world, but there's only one you. A million painters, but only one you. A million poets, but only one you. You give identity to your gift, not the other way around.